Well, welcome everybody to the AG Next Gen Leaders podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower you as a next gen leader to effectively be a disciple of Jesus Christ who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. My name is Holly Davis, and I will be your host for today. And with me is Austin Westlake, Student Discipleship Director, and Pastor Rick Ross, who is our General Treasurer. Pastor Rick, Austin, thank you so much for being with us today. So
great to be here with you, Holly, and with you, Austin. It's good to see you
It's
again.
an honor. It's kind of intimidating sitting here with the treasurer talking about money. I mean, that's pressure right there.
It's just another day.
So, Pastor Rick, when thinking about this episode and thinking about our personal ministry journey, Austin, you've got young family, young kids, thinking about the next gen leader and just thinking about personal finance and being able to just steward the finances that the Lord has given us, right? And steward them well. There's nobody better. There's nobody better. You've helped work with Troy and I personally, and so wanted to bring you in because I know that you have incredible wisdom. Austin, I know that we encounter young leaders, next-gen leaders who are either starting in their ministry or maybe they're already in 20, 25 years and looking at their retirement, looking at their personal finances. And so just wanted to have a discussion today and, a pretty frank, open conversation about finances. And Pastor Rick, I know that you have an incredible story. Why don't you kind of just start with that for us?
Oh, thanks, Holly. In a nutshell, the long story of decades, I grew up like every other kid who wanted to have more things than he could afford. And I lived that. I was raised in a small church. Mom and dad were the pastors, and we had nothing. And something happens when you get out and you're a single youth pastor. You begin to want the new car, and we get married, and we want the same house that all the other couples in the church who have been working at it. So we bought a house, and next thing you know, within a couple of years of being married, we're over our head in debt, and had to come to a realization that something was wrong. It was at that moment that my dad mailed me this old book. I don't know if you can even get it anymore. It's the pre-Dave Ramsey, Dave Ramsey.
Wow.
It's Your Money
Vintage.
Matters by MacGregor, and it literally changed my life. I grew up as a Christian and as a tither, and I believe that. Mm-hmm. We'll get to tithing later on, but tithing alone isn't enough. It's one step. So we made a decision, late 20s, early 30s, that we were going to be good stewards. And at that day, we began to change the way we spent, the way we did, and more importantly, the way we look at money. The second book that I would highly recommend that was that part of that is Money, Possessions, and Eternity by Randy Alcorn. I love Randy Alcorn's writings, and it helped me understand that I'm to be a good steward of everything I have. Here, one of the thoughts that I came out of that with, it's not original, but it hit me. If God can't trust me with what I have, why would he trust me with more?
Yeah.
So if I'm not taking care of my clothes, if I'm not hanging them up, if I'm not polishing my shoes, the little things that I think we don't often think about as a young minister and are moving and winning the world. And at that moment, we changed. And at that time, we began the sacrificial, planned savings for future. And that's another whole big story. But it all came from a realization that we couldn't live this way, and that we didn't want to live this way, and God brought just the right people and the right books into my life.
Great.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Austin, any thoughts on that?
I would just say that I think there are a lot of ministers, young ministers, who find themselves in that very spot because you jump into ministry, you want the house, you want the car, you want to have a place for your family to grow. And now more than ever, because of social media, you can see what other people have, which reminds you of what you don't have. And so I think the temptation to jump in quickly like that, like you were saying, is greater now than ever, because now it's very obvious what you do and don't have based on what you see other people having. And so I just think that it's a really valuable lesson that young leaders need to learn to steward what they have and then believe God will give them more, because he can't trust you with more if you're not going to be faithful with the little.
Exactly. And again, we all know it's not money that's anything wrong. Money is a good thing used correctly, but it's the love of money. And I don't know that any of us in our Pentecostal AG circles have a love of money, but we do have a love of possessions, which really is the modern day understanding of the love of money. So if I'm wanting a car I can't afford, that's a love of money. If I'm wanting a house I can't afford, that is the love of money. And that is then the root of all evil, which then is the root of mismanagement. And mismanagement leads to all kinds of problems, which all in themselves are sinful attitudes.
So can I ask, so you mentioned with Susan being in debt, from a practical standpoint, what did you guys do to kind of reverse that?
One of my big things for everyone, and especially the young people, but it's of everyone, and it's churches, we established a budget. Budget seems to have a negative connotation, so let me say a different phrase, which is just another way of saying a budget. Pre-planned spending guide. You know, time, the most precious commodity, if you don't plan it, somebody else will, and pretty soon at the end of the day, you've been busy all day, but you haven't accomplished anything. The urgency, that whole process there. And so we came up with a planned spending guide. It begins with the 3 questions. Where am I? So we did an analysis of where we are financially. Where do we want to be? What were the big plans? How do we did want to have a home down the road. We did want to have an ability to help our kids go to college that I didn't have. We did have these ideas, these dreams. So we had the picture, where am I? Where am I going? And then the plan to get there, which I believe is Proverbs 29:18, the vision. There are dreamers and there are visionaries. And I think it's interesting with this next gen, young men and women will dream dreams. That's the big thing. We're going to win the world. We're going to do this. We're going to take over our city. All these great, and I did it and I still want to do it. But the old men and women see visions. Well, let me help you, Holly. Let me help you, Austin, with a plan to get there. The NIV says, without instruction, people scatter. In other words, big dreams without plans don't do anybody any good. And they're almost divisive because I keep waiting for something. So we established a plan, a budget, and we decided we were going to analyze this. How much do we have coming in? How much is going out? And of course, like so many at that time, more was going out that was coming in. And we had then to make some decisions, which is another story.
Any questions on your end?
Yeah, well, just a thought. I think the scripture you referenced, I think in one of the versions, maybe ESV, it says without prophetic vision.
That's good.
Right. And so when we make a budget, we're actually giving prophetic vision to our money, and we're telling our money where it is going rather than our money telling us where we have to be.
I love that.
And so you're speaking over it.
Yeah, I think it's the SMART goals. You can read in any book, the SMART, specific, measurable. I got that idea, Austin, and it changed. S for us is spirit given. A good goal, a great goal, a God goal has to come from the Spirit.
Yeah, it's good.
Then you can deal with the measurable, attainable, and all adjustable. But I think for us, we have to have a sense that it's more than just a paper and a pencil and a book knowledge. There is something that God is speaking to me. Because the essence, I didn't even say it, the essence of a great dream isn't just more stuff. It's more ability to do kingdom work.
It's great.
So in that was, we want to be able to travel overseas as missions and not need anybody to support us. In that was, we want to personally support missionaries. In that was, we want to be able to create a scholarship for those who are called to the full-time ministry and yet can't afford it like I couldn't. How can I help that generation where I wasn't? It's spiritual. I love that, Austin. Thank you.
So good.
And one question I would have about a budget as well is that I think it's important to spend our money where it matters, where it really matters, especially as a young minister. A lot of individuals are working on a pretty tight budget. I was, as a young youth pastor, I mean, there were a couple times I had to call my parents and say, hey, anyway, you guys have some extra milk or groceries? I mean, a youth pastor, I was working for my dad too. And I'd call him and say, like, Dad, you guys got dinner tonight? But what would you say are some of the places that a young minister and their family should be putting their money? Where are the most important places their money should be going?
That's good.
Well, in a small, quick thing, number one, you have to put down the necessities. You have to have a roof over your head. You got to pay the utilities. You have to have basic food, on and on. But here's what we have to understand today. A cell phone is not a necessity. Now, I think it is. I don't know how I could live without it. But a 16-year-old can get away with not having expensive vacations are not a necessity.
Right.
That was the first thing we cut out. And our vacations for those years with the kids was, do I have enough gas in the car to get to grandma and grandpa's house and mooch off of them for a week? And oh, by the way, Dad, I don't have any gas to get home, fill up my tank. So, but we did that.
Sure.
I mean, everybody wants what somebody has,
Sure.
but they don't want to go through the process to get there. Mm-hmm. And part of my story that you know, Holly, is that when we were married and we made this decision, we didn't have enough money to eat out. We ate out once a week, Saturday night because Friday newspapers had the coupons.
There you
Buy
go.
one, get one free.
Wow.
It always had at the bottom there, one per family. So I went in one line with Derek, bought a meal and got a free one for him. Susan went in another line, bought a meal, and that was it. It was
That's
normally
wild.
Dairy
Love it.
Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I look back now and say, wow, that was horrible. But it was shaping of my very essence. So what are the necessities? And in that has to become a place that we begin to think about the retirement. We begin to think about saving for the big event, big purchases. So we would need more time to really go through a time of budgeting. I've just worked out one. We're ready to push it out on the 5 big rocks of a minister's compensation. 5 things that should be part of every minister's compensation would be another great episode.
Yes.
And you have to have all of these together. But if the church is not doing it, how do we subsidize that? So what are the necessities, real necessities? And then how do I prioritize my giving, my saving, my investments?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So good.
Good.
Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that's,
okay.
I think it's brilliant.
So I would love to talk through, I remember for Troy and I, we, like you, one income,
Yep.
in ministry, starting out, not a whole lot of funds there. But I do remember a mentor, kind of walked us through our tithe, but not just our tithe, but our offering.
Yep.
And that spiritual component, however you want to talk about it, and, really kind of poured into us. And I can remember writing that very first missions check that was above our tithe. It was $5. And I remember shaking writing that check and putting it in the offering and going, Lord, you're going to have to take this and you're going to have to multiply it because number one, I don't know if that check's going to clear. I believe it will, know, but talk to us, Pastor Rick, because there is such a component, a spiritual component of the tithe and the offering that plays such an important role in our personal finances.
So from day one, I had that. I'm 4th generation AG preacher. Susan is also. Derek, our son, is 5th generation. Our oldest granddaughter preached her mini sermon on a missions trip this summer.
That's wild.
So we're pretty excited about what that might be leading to, hoping and praying. Why not pray that if there are generational plumbers, why can't there be generational AG pastors? And we can't call them, but we can sure put them in the right spot, right?
Really
So I was raised with this. So there was never a doubt in our mind or Susan's that tithing was the priority because we were absolutely committed to the fact that God can do more with 90% than I can do with 100%.
Yep.
I can give you scriptures, but I can't do that. You have to believe that.
Yep.
There are many people out there who disagree. Great. All I know is He has blessed me. Now, again, go back to the first part. It's not just tithing, and if I give 10%, everything works out, because it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
There are many times in that process, as we were tithers plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we set a goal. Let's start with 10%, then 11%, then 12%, till we got to 20, 25%.
Yep.
Wow. Yep.
But that was an incremental trust walk.
Yeah.
Because I think part of this life, in the ministry especially, but it's for everybody, is to make sure that we don't get to a place that we're so comfortable with where we are that we settle down. Yes. Now, next gen, you guys don't know what settling down is. Sure. And that's good.
Sure.
And we understand the older we get. I'm having I'm preaching. I just can't believe I've come here. I'm preaching senior camp at North Dakota this weekend.
Oh, let's
and
go.
it's just like
Let's
yesterday I did a youth revival.
go.
So what has happened here?
Let's go.
But here's what we learned from them: that progressive, consistent, daily. It's like taking a vitamin. You can all run out there and take a multivitamin today, and it will do you no good. 1 month, it's a progressive. It's this adding on, and tithing is the base by which we build everything on.
Yep.
And so I just believe, and we're committed, and you have to make that yourselves. You too, everybody watching, we have to make that commitment that we believe this is the base foundation.
Yeah.
As Jesus Christ is to our salvation, so tithing is to the blessings of our finances.
It's really good.
Now, I hear the arguments, but there are heathen out there who are built. Yeah, there are. And one day it all gets settled. But for us, as for me and my household,
Absolutely.
we're going to say tithing is the basis by which we move forward.
Yep.
So when I wrote that $5 check, what was so nervous, right?
Yeah.
Above the tithe, but I'll never forget that week in the mail, we got a check that was probably 4 or 5 times over what we gave, that $5, some kind of a refund or something. But it was at that moment that I realized that, God was honoring the faith of the offering.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You got your paycheck and it's $500.
Mm-hmm.
What constitutes a tithe?
According to Scripture, your first fruits.
Yeah, what does that mean? Because now you're hitting the bottom line. That's good. First fruits is what?
I think it'd be the first amount of money that goes out.
It's the first one.
The
So
first
I
check
didn't think
that's
about
written.
this coming in here, and I don't have 10 $1 bills, but if I did, I may have 10 bills, and I have them. It doesn't matter which one of these I pull out as long as it's the first one.
Yeah.
And I think because it's a spiritual principle.
Yeah.
Give God first.
Yeah.
Which says what? First means priority. And I think that's what we have to understand. It's not, well, if I have it left over, I will.
Right.
Yep.
That's good.
It's the first fruit.
Yep.
It's the firstborn. It's we go all through Scripture. It's so clear for those of us who believe,
Yep.
and it's not clear for those who don't. But that's like salvation. So again, I want to equate these. It's not tithing is part of salvation. It's just that tithing is the foundation of finances, as belief in Jesus Christ is in my salvation.
And it's easier now than ever to have that be the first amount of money that goes out because of automatic withdrawal
Sure.
and tithing. So, I mean, that should be set up in the life of every minister automatic. You don't even have to make the decision. You don't have to make the choice, rather. You've already made the decision. So it's done.
So good. First fruits.
Yep.
That's good. That's good. So with Austin here, 3 young kiddos, thinking about setting aside paying the bills and, all of those things. I'm sure, Austin, you and Lauren are probably talking about, saving for college and retirement and all of those things. Pastor Rick, what are some things that our next gen leaders should be prioritizing as far as, looking at their finances, having honest conversations, assessing where they are? Where's some of those things do they fall?
Let me urge you, all next gens, to first of all stop and take a holistic look at life. We are being pressured on every side, from advertising and peer pressure, to keep accumulating stuff. We just moved here. And one of the great processes of moving is clearing out clutter.
Yes.
You have to get rid of stuff.
We got rid of so much stuff. I'm way offline. I drive around every town, every community, out in the rural areas, and everywhere we go, there are these storage units for rent. What a picture of first world problems.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
We have so much stuff, we can't keep them in our house and garage, that we're now going to pay money to store stuff we don't need.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it starts there, Holly. I really do. I think we want to jump into my kids' my kids' college and my retirement, but I think it's a false hope.
It's good.
If I haven't made the details. The other thing that hit me last night as I was praying about this is you have to take a long-term approach.
Good.
I didn't bring it out, but if I brought out my piece of paper, it's now on my computer. I've switched over, but I can show you from 38 years old, when I really got serious about this, no, 28, a piece of paper that started with my 1-page net worth. And I tracked it all the time. Income, savings, investments, bills. And for those first several years, I was wondering, is this worth it? Because you put $100 into a savings account and it gets 2%.
Yep.
Well, I could have enjoyed that $100.
Right.
But it's not until you see the compounding interest.
Yeah.
Again,
Sure.
there's a compounding spiritual result of living for God in our life, all three of us.
Yep.
That I've always been I was raised in a church. I've been there, and there are things in my life that are compounding spiritual blessings that others who have come to know Jesus at my age don't have. They're still going to heaven. They still have ability. They still are called in ministry. But there's something about as we build on building, precept on precept, dollar on dollar, spirit on spirit, and we begin to have that. So it's a long term of it. And I think the only way we can do it, listen, when you're having trouble paying your bills, you're not going to sacrifice your kids' clothing to put money in a savings account if you don't have a bigger picture.
Right.
See, that's where the dream is. That's where the big picture is. The big picture gives me that motivation, and the spiritual commitment, discipline, gives me the ability to put it aside. Yep. So we can't give everybody the same pattern, but I do know this. In the general rule, if we set aside the tithe, 10%, first fruits, and we make a commitment to the savings investment, and it's a bigger picture of 10%. Hey, I have a way I can guarantee you'll never have debt. Spend less than you make.
There you go.
Yep.
And once we buy into that, that this is where I am today, I'm going to, and that there's an element of this is what God has given me today.
Yep.
And he's wanting to see if I'm going to be a good steward. Stewardship is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
It's taking care of what I had. You mentioned it earlier. I honestly believe this. Why would God bring new people to a church, to your youth ministry, your children's ministry, if you're not taking care of those who are already there?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
He can only trust us with what we have proven ourselves.
Really good.
Parable of the talents. 5, 2, 1.
Yep.
It wasn't so much that the 5 guy got 5 more, and the 2 guy only got 2 more, and it was a matter of that the one with 5 did his very best.
Yeah.
The one with 2 did his very best, her very best. And the one with 1 buried it. And I think there are too many next-gen pastors burying what they have. Their spiritual gifts, their voice, and in this case, their finances. Because they don't see the value of the long term.
Yeah.
Money doubles every so many years based on the interest rates, and I can show it to you that every one of us can be a millionaire by the time we retire if we just put a little bit. This key to financial success is a little bit over a long period of time on a regular basis.
Yep.
So
it's really good.
So good. Any other questions?
I would just say, almost piggybacking off of what you mentioned, just not spending more than you make.
Yeah.
I just think for young leaders, I know it's such a simple concept, but it's something that so many young leaders fall into is spending more than they make. And what happens when you spend more than you make, let's say you want something and you don't save for it, you buy it before you save for it.
Putting it on a credit card. Sure.
You just circumvented the process and you said, I'm going to have the prize before I go through the process. And when you say, I want the prize before I go through the process with your finances, you're probably going to say that in other areas of your life. And that's a really dangerous place to be relationally, with your ministry, with your leadership. Because if you're willing to circumvent the process here give yourself the thing you want in the moment without going through the process, you're probably going to do it in another area of your life at some point. So I just think that it is a telltale sign that your heart might not be in the right place if you're willing to buy something before you've saved for it. And what I have found is that if you save for the thing you think you want, usually by the time you have the money to buy it, you don't want it anymore and you do something wiser with your money.
We instituted a 24-hour policy. We were not allowed to do anything until we waited and prayed for 24 hours. And it's amazing how many times 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But let's take it one more step, Austin. That's so good. Buying now what I can't afford is really saying, God, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to trust my credit card.
Right.
I'm going to trust a merchant. And we just don't understand the spiritual connection. This is what bothers me in churches, that we can't talk about money because somehow it's this sin. No, it's part of the process. Ministry flows out of people who have learned to be blessed and a good steward. And so the other thing is, let's have a good time, not today, but what are we spending our money on?
Yeah.
That is causing us to spend more, and let's analyze it.
Yeah.
It's good.
The newest and the latest technology. Listen.
Sneakers.
Yeah. I love shoes, man. Let's just be honest.
We all have that. And
Sure.
we no longer want suits and ties in church. I get it. But we want $200 pair of jeans in church. So we have switched one view for another view. The latest phone. I mean, each one doesn't change that much, but we have to. And then we get caught up with the $50 a month rather than settling for a season.
Right.
Not forever. We've got to have the latest car. We have to have the latest computer.
Yep.
I just think that this is where we're getting for the next gen.
Yep.
Let's settle down and say thank you. Contentment.
Yeah.
A spirit that says, I'm not going to settle, but I'm going to settle.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up. I'm not losing hope, but this is good.
Yeah.
Count your blessings.
Yeah.
Name them one. The old song.
Sure.
But when we do that, it stops to get us off of what we don't have, and we thank God for what we do have.
So good. So real quick, we're getting ready to close because I got one final question for you. But I do have a part. Kind of walk us through, Pastor Rick, because what I'm hearing a lot of, and I'm thinking of marriages, and I'm thinking of communication, and I'm thinking of, assessing the budget together. Yep. How often are you and Susan and you and Lauren looking at your budget, what does that look like?
Yeah. So it changes over the years. So the younger you are and the less you have, the more you need to do this. But here's what hit me. It was very easy for me to tell Derek and Chris, our two kids, when they wanted something, I would love to give that for you.
Sure.
I'm a loving dad, but we can't afford it. That was very easy and almost a cop-out because it wasn't good for them to have that. Because now I'm teaching. And so then it became, wow, that's a really nice, and we can afford it, but it's not a good use of our money. And that's where we are today. So we do it regularly. So the latest one is we in agreement. So I just think this is so important.
It's important, yeah.
So we're moving and it's a different kind of house. So we're changing furniture, and of course she's the queen of the home. She gets her way, and I love it because she's better than all that kind of stuff. Man. You were just there until it comes to the dining room. So I have this picture of what I want our dining room to look like.
Yeah. Of all the rooms, the dining room is the one.
Because it's this. Yeah. At my stage, it's when people come in, we're going to entertain. It's the dining room. I'm not taking them into my bedroom and the dining room. I want it to have a look. And I can today afford it. So it's not like I'm stretching, right?
Sure.
I can pay cash for what I want.
Yep.
She wasn't okay with it. And I've waited. I didn't have to. I have the money. I feel like I have God's blessing on it. But I wasn't in unity with her.
Wow.
Until just 2 days ago. I'm ready. And all of a sudden now, I'm going to order it. We're going to get it. And instead of every time I go in there being reminded that I had to do this, I'm going to sit in there with Susan and say, we get this because we agreed.
That's awesome.
So the budgeting together, you can't move forward. And when the kids are old enough, they need to be a part of it. Not all the details. It changed me as a pastor. And at CAG.
Sure.
So we all came in together.
Yep.
You can spend what you want to, but if you do, it has to come out of some place, and the final piece, comes out of our salary.
Right.
So if you want more in the youth ministries, great. But are you really, and so let's get involved with this thing. Budgeting regularly together. I think it should be a minimum of a monthly get together. It's a big, just like we're going to do here at every business organization, you have a big budgeting process, but then once you have it done, you review it on a regular basis. I think monthly.
Yeah,
good.
I would say the same thing, especially for us having 3 young kids who, if we ever want to have a conversation, it's basically got to be after they go to bed or if we have gone out on a date or something. So we end up, I find a lot of times if we do a date night at a local restaurant or something, we'll end up talking about it over date night, which isn't necessarily what we want to be talking about at date night. But in the stage we're in,
it's kind of what you need to do.
It's the only time that we have. And so I would say probably monthly. And maybe not even as often as that in certain seasons.
Sure.
But monthly is what we shoot for. If we can get out on a date night, we spend some time. We just kind of cover things and talk like, hey, what is this looking like? What about this? And I also will say that for me, one of the things I realized early on in ministry is that it's actually wiser for me to let her do a lot of the financial organizing. And I know some people might have an issue with that. They feel like they have to do it. It has to be them. For me, I didn't feel that pressure. She helps me, and she's better at it than I am. And so I actually allow her to lead
And it
the way
will
with
change.
that. Yeah.
We started with me in charge. Then I realized she had that ability to do it today, and now it's back to me. But here's what I'm going to help all of you who believe that it's your guys. You believe it's your God. Great. Then assign it to her.
That's really good.
She's better than you. You're in trouble because you're in charge. And so, it's just, but then now you've opened up another whole podcast on why do we males think?
Yeah.
And let's go back to Genesis. It's the fall of man, and we still choose to live under the curse in this area. And if you're under the curse in one area, you open yourselves to so much stuff. But
part 2, 3, 4, and 5 is coming. Wow. So one final question. What would General Treasurer Rick Ross say to 20-year-old Rick Ross, knowing what you know now?
Let's see, one thought, so much. Everything we've said, but let's come back to priorities. The Bible says, Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, which simply means the right way. Righteousness, right way.
Right.
So RIV, it's catching on, Ross International Version.
Wow.
Put Jesus first in all of his things, and everything will fall in place. We've all heard it. You may have said it. I used to say it. I don't anymore. My first priority is my family. Then we'll say, no, Jesus. Okay, my second priority is my family. That's not true either. That's not biblical. There's nothing in the Bible that puts the family. Jesus said, who's my family? But there are moments my family becomes my priority.
Sure.
If you were on staff or you're here, I'm going to guarantee you as the general treasurer, if you call in every day this year, the rest of this year, and say, my family needs me more than you need me at the office, you'll be looking for a new job. Right? Sure. Because we have understandings that not every day the family, but there are also the extremes where pastors are saying, well, my family has no priority. So it is. What day is it? What time is it? What are my sacredness? What are my family times? What are my work times? Wherever you are, be there. So it is a simple priorities. Jesus will help me understand when I need to give extra time to my family. We have it. So we budget money. Let's start budgeting the more important. Let's budget time.
It's really good.
Good.
And if we fill our time correctly, there is enough for the family. You don't have to sacrifice your family, nor do you have to sacrifice your ministry if you just understand what Jesus is saying.
So good.
That's great.
Pastor Rick, thank you so much. I am just sitting here going, gosh, we could do a part 2, a part 3, and continue this conversation. I think for next gen leaders, it's such an important topic.
Yeah,
right?
it's huge. It's huge. And it's something we don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
And a lot of leaders that are in the next gen space, they haven't lived enough life to be able to speak to the things that you just spoke to. So we value it. We appreciate it. I know that we need it. And there's things that we can learn. And it's also, I think, a great example of the fact that it's okay to be blessed. It's okay to be blessed, and we will be blessed and should be blessed if we're doing what God's asking us to do in the way he's asking us to do it. And we don't have to be ashamed of blessing if it's from the Lord. So just grateful for your input.
Episode 99.
Yes.
The difference between a scarcity mentality and a prosperity mentality.
Yeah.
We need it.
For sure. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today on this episode of the AG Next Gen Leaders podcast. Jesus called us to make disciples of him. So be a disciple-making leader who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.